I'm Melanie Swayze, a global real estate advisor with Gibson Sotheby's based in Metro Boston. I closely advise homebuyers and sellers of all stages of life, guiding them to intelligent, winning decisions.
I'm Derek Lumpkins, a real estate investor with a background in community organizing. I also enhance equity and inclusion initiatives at companies and organizations, and I guide leaders through executive coaching.
When we get together, we dive into the intersections of culture, class, mindset, and Black freedom.
Welcome to the Black Lining Forum,
a podcast about Black wealth, power, and land.
Hey, good morning, Miss Melanie.
Greetings.
How you doing?
Derek Lumpkins. I'm delighted to be in your presence, as always.
Oh, you're too kind, too kind. It's always a delight to be in yours as well. What's going on these days?
What is going on? You tell me what's going on these days.
I mean, so much.
You're
Some things I don't really want to talk about. Well, we're in fall. We're now officially in fall.
Yes.
The fall equinox?
Oh, geez, I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
I wish I were one of those people who did that. Our guest today probably is good at that.
Yeah. So I think it's the fall equinox. Well, no, that doesn't sound right. It must be. Someone will correct us eventually. But yeah, we're now in fall. So,
it's
you can feel.
Rosh Hashanah Eve. It's
What's
what
that?
it is. It's Rosh Hashanah Eve right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Jewish New Year is Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, do you say happy Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah.
There's a specific thing to say. I forget what it
You
is.
say Shana Tova.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Good. All right. So we have something, I don't know if it's positive, but there's something in the natural world that we're bringing to this, which I like. Because there's just so much unnatural, unholy,
Yes.
just ridiculousness that's going on these days.
Swirling and swirling.
Like the Wicked Witch in
And
the Wiz and the Wizard of Oz and all the other plays, Wicked, all of them, just bring them all in. They're all swirling together. But I was in the gym today and I was listening to one of my gym tracks, and this house song came on, and it's actually the official title is called Earth Song, but in parentheses, it's What About Us? And 99% of the song there just is the chorus, what about us, what about us, what about us? And that just got me thinking, yeah, what about us?
Yes.
And I also read an article in The Guardian recently, actually today, written by Robert Reich, where he's talking about how it's going to be up to us to defend our democracy. Yeah. So the two of those coming together pretty much within an hour of each other on the same day, I was like, yeah, what about us? Because you've got, sorry?
No, you go.
No, I was just thinking, because you've got these, at least in the US, you've got these right-wing politicians in power who are really focused on corporate interest, big business, making a lot of money. I'm like, well, what about us? And you've got these Democratic / left-wing people who are not leading. They're sort of like, oh yeah, we should do something, but we're not sure. I'm like, but what about us? We're the ones who are suffering through this. And then I said in a previous episode that I didn't think that the universities, the law firms, the media, they're gonna come and stand up for us. And so I'm like, and we actually see how universities are giving student information, they're giving faculty information away. And I'm like, well, what about us? And so just this whole thing just kept ringing in my head. What about us? What about us? So that's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you for sharing that. I have two responses. One is, yes, there is no rescue. There isn't some entity, some person who's going to rescue us. Like, it is us. So that's what about us to begin with. It is up to us collectively. What is the collective? And so also, what is us? And my first thought when you said us, honestly, was beyond human. It was about the beings around us, that non-human animals we share the planet with. It is all of us that are at the behest of these big shifts right now. And how can we learn from beings that don't have patterns that we have, frankly? So that is, could the us be collective enough for us to learn from, as people say, our non-human or more than human kin. So that's one of the things that comes to mind for me.
I like that. So you mean something more than how ants and bees sort of work collectively in that sense, or?
It could be that. I mean, I often talk about mycelium, the networks of the root systems below the ground, communicating with each other, communicating among trees. But there's so many networks. I actually recently I haven't listened deeply enough. I will go back, but I was listening to in a panel discussion hosted by Krista Tippett with these two. One person is a newfound philanthropist. She does progressive funding work, and the other one is a biologist. And they work together talking about how we can learn from the wild, right? That the whole idea of even competition is not inherent actually in nature. It's a small part of what happens in nature. There's actually a lot of collaboration and a lot of order. And so, how do we learn from what is happening around us, what we've been blind to for so long? How do we learn from the environment that we're part of to help yank back? And there's also actually this term, let me see if I can remember it. I think it's phenotypic plasticity, which is that trees and other non-human beings actually have more stretch. They have more capacity to adapt to these environments. Birds in their migratory patterns, we're seeing them do it, can survive. They may travel farther and create new paths. Or even plants might move to other places, but their pollinators may not move with them. So it's like we humans have to understand what's happening for them and assist them and create a path, create a channel for them to actually adapt. But the point is, they can adapt, and so can we. So how do we learn how to take this moment of swirl and twirl and begin adapting, doing something new, doing something that's cooperative, collective, intelligent?
Excellent questions.
Yeah.
Excellent questions. Well, I'm sure today's guest will tell us all about that and will instruct us on lots of things. So let's hear about her before we bring her on.
Yeah, excited today to welcome Wilnelia Rivera. She's a results-driven philanthropic leader and organizational strategist with over 20 years of experience advancing social justice, climate equity, and movement building. And I know that she is very deeply connected to the systems of the earth, and happy to learn more from her. So come on in, Wilnelia.
Hello, hello. Welcome.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where your body feels.
And how are you today?
I'm doing good this Monday. Can't I've had a good rest this weekend, so feeling
Mm,
feeling in my body and in my person today, which is a good thing to start the week. So
Nice, nice.
yes, yes.
Well, we're glad to have you on the show today.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I guess let's start off with it's a small question, but it's a big question. What
Yeah.
about us? What about us? What's going on?
Yeah, no. Well, no, I just there were so many things that popped up in my mind, and I was just like listening to you guys a little bit as I just love the way that the conversation flowed from the us to the natural environment. But I mean, I think to repeat what you guys have said, but in my own, my own words, right? Our us has been rejected effectively, right? And it looks very differently across the globe, right? Because whether you're sitting in Gaza or in Sudan or here in sort of the first world or whatever you want to call us at this point in the United States,
belly of the beast is
yeah,
how I'm thinking about it.
the belly of the beast, right? Black bodies, non-gender conforming bodies, non-English speaking mindsets, it is all under attack, right? That science is no longer common ground, even if it's always been hotly contested, says everything to, what kind of, structural changes they're trying to make, right? So, but I think most importantly, and you guys are saying it too, is that it wasn't just that the us was rejected. It was that every every step of progress, particularly the last 20 to 30 years, was met with some form of resistance, and not just by the quote unquote right.
Yes, this is true.
And I think that ultimately really is what, to me, just showed just how fragile our relationship as people of color, as Black people, as gender nonconforming people, as queer folks, however you sort of identify within that spectrum, that the values and that what we were speaking for and the social contract that we wanted, wasn't just what they didn't want. It's that even if it made their lives better, they'd rather our lives be worse. And I think that that's the part that I'm like, oh, because at no point in this run was I doing any of this thinking that if I do all this work over here, that it's going to take away from someone else, or because I want certain people to not be doing well, right? And I think that that's the part that feels really hard, but at the same time, it's the part that really, to me, is the biggest lesson of it all, which is that, and you've said this, both of you said it, we got to really stick to the work about building the long term now, and what does that new sunset look like, and what does that actually mean, and what kind of new relationships do we need with each other, right? But also to, like, quote unquote systems, right? Because the truth is that for a lot of us, and I will speak to myself, I was bought into a system. I was socialized into believing into a system. And all the little progress points that I culminated in others along the way, it has all vanished, and it's vanishing. So how can you expect me to continue to adopt or believe in that same system, or think that my whatever new long-term thinking or sunsetting that we're trying to figure out is going to happen through that same prism? Because it can't. And I think it just really opens up a new playing field for, like, how we show up for each other. Because I think for a long time we've been fighting each other or debating each other to the degree that we see each other as, like, tools of the system, when at the end of the day, whether you were more left of me or not, they're coming for us in whatever capacity, right? So, but I'll stop there for now.
I mean, no, you could keep going for sure, but what you're saying is taking my mind into two different directions. So, because you talked about both the international and the domestic fears, and so internationally, and so I'm also trying to hold on to a little bit of hope, because we, as a modern society, we do a lot of doom scrolling. I don't want this to be like another point on someone's doom scroll, but in thinking about the international side of things, I see some hope, because I saw how in the news today, Britain, Canada, Australia, Portugal decided to recognize Palestine. We see that people, just the average people around the world, have been protesting for months, if not for years, in support of Palestine, in support of the Gazans and Palestinians. And so I see there's maybe some opportunity to redeem humanity. I don't know if that's a little too strong, but to sort of not lose ourselves into the despair, because there is some action happening there, while simultaneously on the domestic front in the United States, I don't know how much I want to go into this, but we see how the leaders of the right and the leaders on the left actually are almost venerating this well-known racist who they're declaring a national holiday for him on George Floyd's birthday. I'm calling it George Floyd's birthday. And then they had this, like, televised event. And so I'm kind of like, just the visual imagery of those two things side by side it's not just heartbreaking, it's mind-breaking. And I'm like,
it's meant to be mind-breaking.
Supposed to be. That's what we call authoritarianism. That's what dictatorships want. Like,
so I'm not really sure where to go with that, but I just want to throw it out there as part of the
it's like, Wilnelia, we're inviting you to help us understand, how do you navigate a budding authoritarian regime? What do we do?
Look, and there's obviously no one answer to this, but feels like we spent some of our weekends the same this weekend, just in you sort of noting these observations, because what really struck me at certain points in the weekend that I did, catch a feed here and there was the sentiment of, wow, the way we are spending our Sundays and our weekends are deeply, deeply telling of where we are and where some places are going, and in the directions that it can take. Right. But also the directions I think that it can take without any real organizing. And I say that, right, because at the end of the day, it has taken a genocide, but also 70, 75 years of Palestinian activists and Palestinians asking for a state, asking for their land back, right? So that's also, for a long time felt like it was never going to be real, and then that could never arrive. And that you need a genocide to make something more palatable, that's imperialism. That's the structural change, right? That's the unfortunate thing, right? But I think for us in the US context, we have to think about, well, what does that mean for us? Because the truth is that those spaces that we saw last weekend, like the Charlie Kirk spaces, Jimmy Kimmel getting taken out, Stephen Colbert, these aren't necessarily folks that I will stand for necessarily. But when white supremacy is willing to eat their own, they will roast us. If they're willing to eat their own, they will roast us. So that to me means we got to start having these conversations and figuring out what our trajectory looks like. What's the organizing that we're doing, right? Because if people can galvanize around Jimmy Kimmel and start canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions, there are things that we have subscribed to so deeply.
Yeah.
As Black folks, as gender non-conforming folks that have believed in these systems, but at the end of the day, they're burning. We also can't stick by them and continue to say, well, let's just prop them up, everybody. I can understand that we may all have, some of us have a choice and don't have a choice in the sense that is how you make a living and that is how you take care of your family. Okay, right? Peace. At some point, you still go home. And what are those conversations then that we can have? Because what we're not living through is going to a meeting and speaking to our rights and the demands that we want anymore in mixed company.
Yeah.
That's the world that we're living in the United States anymore, unfortunately. And I stay there because I do think that we need to figure out what this looks for us, because, the organizing that's happening right now is, and I've seen this for a few years, especially starting in the first Trump term, has really been focused around mutual aid and care. And I've seen millennials, my peers and older folks, laugh and scoff at that. As younger folks have been demanding that more and saying, you know what, forget electoral politics. We'll do that for a couple cycles, but we really want to do this because we want to make sure that we can be here. Or if we can't be here, that we can purchase some passports and then people can go be safe somewhere. Right. And that's the part that we're not willing to really have a conversation about.
I was just going to ask, getting back to what you were saying about how folks were laughing about mutual aid, what was it that they found laughing in the sense of amusing or laughing in the sense of ridiculous? What did they find what didn't they adopt about that?
It wasn't competitive enough.
Oh, wow.
Because at the end of the day, philanthropy is about performance.
Yes. Right.
Right. So when you have organizations that can say, I turned out X amount of voters,
right.
You have another organization that said, I fed X amount of people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you're not part of the, sort of recognized mainstream nonprofit community that feeds people, then you're not stewards of organizations that can be trusted for social change and social justice, right? And I think that's the thing, the elitism that ultimately is a big part of it, in the meritocracy, for lack of better words, that bleeds through all of our movements. And at the end of the day, look at where we are. So
it's that becomes part of the establishment too.
Yeah, it is. It is very much part of the establishment, and it's very much why when people are talking about at this moment, well, where's the organizing and where certain people are keeping each other safe. That's what they're doing. And apparently there's no glory in that.
Wow.
So what does it take for us to retool ourselves to become more of a collective web?
I think it starts with, and this is where I'm going to, it becomes more, it starts off as an individual journey, but it definitely it integrates and should lead into the collective, which is depending on where you are in your life and how many, years of this breathing you've had on this earth. Some of us of a certain age really need to begin to take a step back around what were the beliefs that we had that actually were part of the problem? What were the mistakes that we made? Having those conversations with self so that we can also begin to figure out what are the more vulnerable conversations that we then need to have with each other. Because I do actually think, and I say that because I have been experiencing that and I have been going through that myself. And I wouldn't speak to anything on this front in particular that I'm not experiencing myself in real time. Because the reality is that is where the truth needs to reveal itself to us, right? So for instance,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I hark back to was one of the biggest mistakes that I made as a leader in all the years of work that I did around different things or didn't do, was that, and I say this as an I, but I know that there was a collective that did this with me, right? But I will take the I in this, especially because of the roles I played in different political campaigns over the years. We made an electoral strategy out of immigration reform, knowing damn well that these folks in power were never going to deliver on it. We could win elections, we can make history, but it didn't change the way that those same people that changed history got one when they went into those legislative offices, whether it's at the state level or at the congressional level. They still had to go and compromise. And it's nothing about those individuals, because it's the system again, right? And that cycle over and over again made me realize, like, we were part of that, guys. Like, I remember the friends on the other side, on our left, be telling us, if we don't do something about this, you're just creating a bipartisan consensus for them to do nothing. And we kept on with our progress and our stuff. And I was a part of that choir, right? And again, not holding any one individual responsible, but I think we got to be able to have really honest conversations about things like that. Because ultimately, I think that that's where we lost the plot little by little on our sense of humanity. And immigration isn't the only part of it. I think the intersection of immigration and what we saw over the course of the Black Lives Matters movement, not just George Floyd, but the course of it, right? From its inception and even till now, when you see former activists that are somehow all of a sudden just appear dead, right? It's like, it says something, right? And I think that we've all tried to just hope and wish that all that has gone away, but we're living through the ramifications of it. So, but yeah, we gotta go there.
I'm curious to know. So we went from international to domestic to community. I want to go to individual. I want to ask you, where do you find your center, and where do you find your hope? Where do you find your energy? Because just in having this conversation, I can see, as you're remembering these conversations, as you're remembering your interactions, it looks like it's taking an emotional toll on you.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, where do you find your strength, your energy, your drive to keep going?
You know, I think, and I would say this in particularly the last, like, I think 2 to 3 years, where, you know, it's felt like we're particularly moving at a different speed, right? I think the first thing I would say is that it's taken me realizing that I can't actually individually take care of myself and be okay. I'm strong, but there's a degree to which that strength doesn't actually serve you in these tougher times. And as much as people told me that in life, I'd always be like, oh, I don't know about that. That just also just feels very risky in terms of like just being that level of honest with, not necessarily with myself, but like with other folks, right? But I think what I realized in that journey, and it's, you know, it's easy to call it a journey now, because it's something that I'm still going through actively. But the truth is that it really takes having more vulnerable relationships with each other, and we don't really realize whether it's cultural, social, contextual reasons why we're all wired not to actually be vulnerable with each other. We have all these sometimes rules and norms of like how we say we want to show up, but then, the thing that's really gnawing at you, you don't really share. So I share that because I do feel that reconstituting my life in a way where relationships are more radically caring and radically intimate and reciprocal has been a real way of like nourishing myself and like having a space to hold me, right, and not think that I'm enough, right? So I think for me that's a big part of it, honestly, right? And also surrendering and letting go of people and dynamics that at the end of the day were feeding my performance.
Yeah.
Because you're wired to perform. I've been wired to perform, and I still am to some degree, right? But what does it look like to be to be tethered to people that are soft landings, and what impact could that have on me? And
Wow.
that's ultimately sort of what I'm trying to cultivate for myself now in my life, because I know that I come from like I see the smoke, let's fight people, but like sometimes we need to just sit down,
Mhm.
you know.
I just need to interject with a few like words and images. I'm listening to you, Wilnelia, and I don't actually remember entirely your heritage, but I know that you're a Latina heritage, and I don't know what generation, but I'm like, yes, you are a high performing, as we all are, highly adapted, high performing in this ultra competitive capitalist Northeast US setting. And that so tool to believe that the way forward and the way to bring others forward is to be like charge and to be like, I can handle this. I can handle this. Even though conceptually, yes, you believe in a collective, but you believe that the collective might rely on you, or you believe that you're out front, or whatever, right? So you don't know how to like lean in. So when you said, and I am experiencing that myself at this moment. And so when you said sit down, I thought squat, which I've literally been thinking this morning about squatting, not just because I was at the gym and my trainer was actually really in very specific ways making me work on properly squatting and staying upright but dropping down at the same time, which is hard to do. But like our peoples closer to the earth know how to squat, okay? Close to the ground, center of gravity, connected to the earth, connected to the intelligence there. It keeps your hips fluid and flexible. It therefore keeps you nimble. And so I'm just noting as I hear you talk about what's shifting in your awareness about what's possible and what's needed. Yeah. And there's something very humble about squatting. And I think that's one of the things I think we've been scared out of our own, not just vulnerability, but sense of humility.
Yeah.
And so to be retrained to that is very uncomfortable, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw in, because I'm thinking about what Wilnelia said about competition.
Yeah.
And how competition and the lack of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Or like how does it get bred out of us? Because when we're kids, we're vulnerable.
Of course, yeah.
By nature, we're vulnerable. Somehow that gets bred out of us. Men, of course, are notorious for being resistant to being vulnerable. But I think also being 3 Black people, 3 people of color, there's the competition of like, always needing to be twice as good or, 3 times as good in order to just get to where our peers just sort of coast.
And faster, and just faster also, just like pew, out ahead. Yes.
Better, faster, whatever, just to get to the starting point.
Yes.
But we are, I think we're all Gen X, maybe you're millennial, but we're okay, you're millennial. So we are the first and second generations to come about after the civil rights era. So a lot of the opportunities that our parents, grandparents, all our elders didn't have, we have. And so, but there's also that added level of competition. We're competing with each other as well as competing with our white peers. And so there's all that sense of like, okay, in a space that was new to us, in terms of the community, like most of our elders didn't know what to do with that because it was new for them. So we've been competing because we had to. We were just thrown into this competitive soup. But then let's also add the 3 of us are all part of the LGBTQ community too. So there's that competition just to be seen as human, just to be seen as accepted and loved and all of that. So I mean, we are swimming in not just systems, but cultural and social expectations just to compete, just to be seen at the baseline. So I think there's all of that that's going on for us as well, in addition to the stuff that gets applied politically too. So just things that were kind of coming to mind around that.
No, absolutely. And it's why, I often try to describe that, and I'm sure you've heard the term too, is that then leads to like a crab in a barrel mentality amongst us, right? Where because we're in this layering, right, we outnudge each other, or perhaps, actually are harmful towards each other in ways that other folks may not be, right? And I think and I share that because I think that this is what this, in this moment of what we're living through, right? Sort of I think you said it best, sort of the emergence of authoritarianism here. And this is, I think, also my perspective as like first generation immigrant coming, from a family that came to the States like in the late 80s, early 90s, but also from a family, or at least half my family on the matriarchal side, that was all, that all grew up in a dictatorship. So the mentality isn't far from me. It's actually in my home. It raised me, right? So the mentality is there. So what I'm experiencing here makes it more clear why we actually need to have these relationships with one another. Because what happens through these transitions, and once things fold in, we lose each other. Mm-hmm. We actually literally lose each other and the connections that we have to each other. We may end up with new names. We may end up in new lands and in new places, not knowing where the hell you ever came from before that. Right. So I share that because I actually do think that is what's most significant now. Because ultimately, especially in the context of the Northeast, right? Let's just, keep it at least to that, or even the context of the U.S. For those of us that are still in a position to be able to wake up every day and have a living, right? There's a degree to which the conditions around us are still going to continue to accelerate and get more aggressive. Oh, yeah. And who knows when it may affect us or not end up impacting us, right? We see that, out of the, people being pushed out of our economy, it's Black women and Black people that are being driven out at the highest rate, right? So we're clear. So in one sense, you're taking out Black folks out of the labor market, then you're taking out immigrants out of the labor market and the country altogether, right? So where do you guys, the thing is happening in front of us, the engineering, right? And earlier you mentioned about, thinking about how do we learn from animals? And one of the animals I've gotten obsessed with, and this is all interconnected, I promise, in the last few years are otters. Right. Most people think of otters as these really cute little, bear-like, almost like animals that are just in the water. And like, sometimes you like see them holding hands, and it's like, but what's the biological purpose of an otter in the larger ecosystem of animals? Right. What an otter does is that when it starts noticing over time that conditions are changing in a particular ecosystem, it'll start moving rocks. It'll start moving grass. It'll start moving little things to start recreating an environment for their little other otter crew, right, to be protected. But when they start doing that, it gives a sign to the other species that some shit's about, and that something's happening that's actually changing the nutrients and changing their ability to stay alive in this particular area. So the otters are like a signal. They're like these, almost like these little social engineers to other species that yo, if they're starting to move to changing conditions, that means something larger is happening to our ecosystem, right? So I share that because I do actually think that that's what we're living through. And what's important is to not continue to make a living every day thinking that all of this is going to be the same, because it's not the same already, right? And if you're holding that candle up right now, you're actually more of a problem to me than whatever craziness we hear on TV or in the newspapers day to day, because at that point, that thing is so perfectly designed to just continue to scare us and keep us away from each other, that I'm clear that I just need to go check in over there every once in a while, because, we need to know what the digest is. But really what I need to do is spend more time over here, right? So, but wanted to share that because I do really think that that's what this opportunity is. And it's why, yes, there's chaos. Yes, there's all of that. But we have to figure this out. And no one's and I think you said it, no one's coming to rescue us, man. This is not a fundable grant. No pitch contest for this one, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to kind of bring two things together. So when we spoke to you sort of in the preliminary conversation, you said we have to learn how to live in our own vulnerability. And then you just gave that idea of the otters reconfiguring their environment. And so I'm maybe you can help me sort of mentally put those two together. So is living in our own vulnerability beginning to put the things together?
Correct. Because it moves the stuck pieces. We have a lot of stuck energy between us. Because what that energy is actually the fucked upness of what we survive every day. But we put a smile on our face and we do the best that we can. But it's why when we're around each other, sometimes we can feel that energy in the room. It don't feel right because it's stuck. Whether it was made stuck, right, by the system, right, or we inherited that way because of the bullshit. But we're still living in these present bodies, baby.
Yes. Yeah, it's like where we're functioning. And how do we get to more relating?
Exactly. And that relating is really important. And to me, as a contrast, I often like to describe it as table talk culture. We like to come to the table to talk. So that means you already have your prepared things that you want to share with me, or the things that you don't, that you need to say, but in no way is that actually connecting to me. Right? And that's usually makes people uncomfortable.
You're giving me marriage advice right at this moment.
Hey, look, some things, good advice applies in more than one arena from my experience.
Yeah.
And I do think that the vulnerability is like, and I know when we sort of first met to have this conversation, one of the things I talked about was the portals of magic, right? And I do think that the vulnerability is the thing that uncooks it.
Yes.
It's the thing that uncorks it, in the sense that, I think about like a particular relationship that I have someone in my life. His name is, Calvin Feliciano, someone that I've known probably for like, probably 20, 22 years, right? Love that man to death. The heading of butts that we've had over the years over different things, right? Where we just like diametrically just like, and at some moments also like stop talking to each other, all these other things, right? Now I think about the relationship that we have and I'm like, wow, yeah. Me and you never would have been able to get to the place that we are as two human beings because you finally put your guard down and I finally put my guard down and we learned how to like talk to like the softer parts of us that weren't talking to each other. That were like, like, I don't want you to look at that part of me. I want you to look at this part of me. Right.
Yeah.
And I share that as an example because I do think that is exactly what I'm talking about. And often we think about only having to do that work for, in our marriages, in our relationships that we have with like maybe bloodkin, right? But the truth is that that's a way of being for us to be with each other. And I get that there's a lot of risk that comes with that. Knows like I share all of this, but this is practice for me, to be clear, right? It's a practice in the way of being because I have my defaults that I'm constantly navigating, right? But to me, that's evolution. Because if I'm not practicing, then I'm just going to stay in my default, right? And we got to practice the evolution with each other. You see, for a long time, we wanted the laws and the policies to create the conditions.
Yes.
And I get it because that's me. It's
rigid. That's rigid. It's two-dimensional.
And right now,
responsive.
And right now, is it really going to give us what we're looking for?
No.
Unless you sell your soul. And even then, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think they want our souls in some cases.
If they believe we have souls, they may not even believe that. Just saying.
All right now. Okay now.
Well,
let me tell you.
Speaking of souls, when we first had a conversation about having this conversation, we talked about collective, we talked about vulnerability, but we also talked about dreaming. So like, how does that emerge?
Yeah. I would say it definitely emerges out of the same interconnectedness that I'm speaking to throughout this, in the sense that, and again, I'll root it in my eye. For so long, I felt like I was either like my job was to document the dreams that people want to create and figure out what's possible. And I convinced myself and what have you, right, that I was really great at that. But what I realized in that process, especially given the last few years, was that I had ceded my own capacity to dream because of the structures and systems that I've been engaging in. Dreaming was no longer about dreaming. It was just about what was possible.
Yeah.
And while that's an algorithm for making a living,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily gonna create, I think, at this stage of life for me, and also like where the landscape is, a breakthrough, right? So I share that because I've had to, and I'm coming back to dreaming. So I'm at the beginning stages, I would say, of like beginning to kind of feel like I don't even know how to describe it, but there is something that happens inside of you, right? Even in the worst of times. But I'm starting to feel that feeling again, right? And I know that the reason why that is happening is that part of it is these intentional nourishing moments I'm having within my mycelium of people that I either deeply love or I haven't always given the chance to love me.
Yeah.
And sort of being in that constant exchange, right? But also knowing when I need to like pull back to just like sit in my own energy so that I'm not getting confused of like, am I feeling this because like, I just had this one conversation with them and I felt like I was vibing, but is it really mine, right? So really to like give that space again to dream again, right? And I think like unlike the past where so much of like what I've done was listen to all the dreams that are in the room.
Yeah.
And then try to sort of be like the quilter of that.
Yeah.
I don't know what this moment is, but I think it's different. And I'd be honest with that. I'm not sure what this moment is, but I know that it is about dreaming in the sense of that. But I know that it's not about me dreaming the dream individually.
Yes.
Which brings me to the final question I want to ask you, which is thinking about vulnerability and communal care and dreaming. What would you ask of the two of us? And or what would you ask of our Black Lining Forum audience?
I would ask everyone to think about what are the hard conversations that you're avoiding with yourself at this moment, and allow yourself to get vulnerable enough to listen to what the whisper has to say and pick one person to share it with. It isn't just, that's what I would share.
That would be a very powerful moment for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah. And we all actually do have that in common. What the thing is where, that's life, right? But we do. And vulnerability is also, I've learned this only, I think, in recent memory, is actually it's like, I'm someone that likes, sports and all that stuff and exercising, right? And it's like courage building with your squad.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not know who your squad is yet, right? But like it is courage building. Because, when you see someone who you thought like, man, like, oh, I thought like they're so put together. Like I've been admiring her. Like I didn't even know she was going through any of that shit. And you made that. I'm like, yo, it's like all of a sudden, like you leave that conversation like, yo, I can do that. Like I may not be ready yet, but let me, build myself up a little bit from here. So I share that because I do think it's
Derek is nodding because that happens between Derek and Derek.
It's scary out here. We're adults.
But yes, I wasn't expecting that as part of this project that Derek and I are doing with this podcast. But yes, I'm like, oh, you're right here.
Yeah. Really? Courage building.
But I also believe in experimentation. I don't believe, like, I know that I have my self-limiting beliefs, but I also know that I have abilities beyond those beliefs. And so it's sort of like, if I don't test the boundaries, I won't go anywhere and no one is going to pull me through them. I'm too old for that. Like if I was 12, they'd be like, oh, come on, you can do it. I'm well past that age. And so like, no one's going to pull me into that. So it's sort of like, if I don't do it for myself, no one else is going to do it for me. Exactly. So it's sort of like, and I will pull other people with me, or I will be like, this is the door. Do you want to walk through it with me? Mm-hmm. And they'll look at me and be like, can we? I'm like, of course we can. And I'll jump back and forth through that door. And they'll be like, how are you doing that? I'm literally just going back and forth. Come with me. Some people will, some people won't. You just never know. But I leave the door open for people as much as I can and say, follow me when you're ready.
Mm.
Or if there's an open door ahead, go ahead and I'll join you when I'm ready. But I don't believe that we should be static.
Absolutely.
We should be able to
Love that.
emerge and develop and grow and evolve as much as we can, because in what, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, it's all done. So we may as well do it
That is
now.
so true. I mean, I think that's so
Real.
resonant for me right now. And Derek has crossed the age 50 milestone, and I'm getting closer to it. And right now,
Yeah, I was trying not to put my age on another
He was
episode.
trying to be very abstract about it.
you are so hot. Anyway, don't let me lose my train of thought. That for me, this stuff I am thinking about, not just like the death of elders in my family or in my life, the perspective. I'm thinking about my own, and I'm like, oh, this time has to count. This moment I have to let this matter. And one of the things I'm realizing is like, oh, and it feels even vulnerable and almost silly to say, but it is new for me. Even though I have deep, close friendships and networks, and I think in committee with my people about big life decisions, it is hard for me to just reach out for someone's hand. And I think that's a big part of what Derek has been cultivating with me. Like, not only is there a door, there's a hand held out to you. You can actually hold someone's grasp onto their finger. And that's the stuff that helps keep you soft enough to be supple enough to listen inside, to begin to dream.
That part.
Yeah.
Yep, that part.
And that is a danger.
Yeah.
That is a danger.
It is a danger because you can't ban dreaming. You can ban books. You can take away my schooling. You can take away the funding from transportation. All right, okay, cool. But we're gonna fucking dream. We're gonna dream even more now.
Magic happens when we reach out and touch and just make contact in a real, vulnerable, open, unknowing way.
Which is why this moment where you hear calls and debates about, who needs to be fighting to save democracy at this moment, I'm like, look, Black folks and those that have worked in an allyship or kinship, since then, push the progress as far as you can. As y'all decided we don't want it no more. So guess what? You fight for democracy. If there's still elections, I'm gonna go vote. I will. I'm not gonna lie. I just voted in my last election here locally, right? So I am gonna go if it's still happening, right? But what we're not gonna do, I'm not gonna spend energy saving something that you guys said make it better. We did make it better, and then you said you didn't want it no more. No, you don't get to take your ball and say I don't want to play no more, and then tell us to come back to the party. No, that's not how it works. That's kind of my thing, right? And I think that that's a discord also, like within this country. That, I'm gonna just call in the Democratic Party at this point, especially those that are within the mainstream of the party. Like, you're as much responsible for what we're going through right now than the GOP is for giving into a bully. And no one is gonna change that around. No, you can write all the books you want. You can give us the whatever you might want, but it's not going to change the truth that we all know now. Right? And I think that is why it's so important that we do this work, around, with each other, with like relationship building, whether that's, within yourself, with others in your village, those that you may not think are in your village, but maybe are adjacent and can be part, right? Because ultimately, it's not going to get better without us. So I just want to be clear. That's the power of us. That's the magic. It's not going to get better. And I don't wish ill on anyone, right? But because it's not going to get any better without us, we got to go figure out better. And what we don't need to do is go rushing, to the white gaze, as Toni Morrison has always remembered us, to be like, do you like my proposal? Because they're not. Because they're not.
Oy.
As my favorite Instagrammer says, 100% agree. I hope you know who I'm talking about because I can't remember his name.
I do.
You do? Okay.
I do.
From Subway Takes. I forget his name, but it's from Subway Takes.
Yeah, I do.
100% agree.
Yeah. So those are my last comments that, because I know in the in the midst of this conversation, you know, I appreciate that we didn't make it about elections or democracy and all that, but I do think it's important that, like, as a contrast to this invitation and this, you know, sort of, this invitation for rest and relationship building and vulnerability and courage building also means that we have to, like, let go of some of the parts of us that feel compelled to save a system that won't even acknowledge us at this point. Or that just wants to talk to us quietly about things. I don't need to be loved quietly right now.
Definitely.
No. So.
Yes.
But thank y'all.
No, thank you. We appreciate your time, your energy, your thoughts, your dreams,
your vulnerability.
Thank you.
And your challenges to us as well.
No, thank you.
And for those of you in the audience who are listening and watching, feel free to send us your questions. We'd love to hear your questions, your comments, and any challenges that you may want to offer for us as well. And we will see you on the next episode of the Black Lining Forum. Take care.